This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to it's time to try, it's time to care, it's time to stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome back to the Special Chronicles show. This is episode 460. My name is Daniel, and I'm the founder of Special Chronicles and a Southern Tribal International Global Messenger of Special Olympics. This is SpecialChronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And be sure to also subscribe or follow and rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. In addition to listen to this audio podcast, we hope that you also subscribe to our channel on YouTube to watch the video version of this episode. As this week, December 27th, we wrap up the end of the year. So in a few days, we'll be ringing in the new year, 2022. So this week, we bring you our annual year-end retrospective episode. I clipped together some of my favorite podcast moments from 2021. Now, that's what I call Special Chronicles Volume 2. Our year-end 2021 best of episode begins right now on SpecialChronicles.com.
This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
Please put your hands together as we welcome back virtually to the Special Chronicles podcast, my friend Tim Shriver.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. That's very generous for you to have me back. A returning guest, yes. I think, is a distinction not many people have.
Yeah.
I'm very proud that you welcomed me back to this really extraordinary. I mean, I just want to note right at the beginning, what a revolutionary you are. I mean, the whole world is catching up to where you were over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Now everybody's talking podcasts. You were doing this more than a decade ago and giving voice to a very important sector of society, to a very important message for our culture, for everyone in our culture. And goodness, you were well ahead of your time. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I kind of, even after 12 years later, I even fumbled through the intro, the
intro. You didn't fumble at all. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, because now adding live streaming to this audio podcast is still, the whole live stream is kind of new to me. But not that many of our guests get to retone, and it was a lot.
You really got to know the producer. You got to have to be able to work the tricks and get back on. I'm very grateful that I was tricky enough to convince you to let me come back.
Yeah, and to know our producer Dalian as well. So it was a lot of fun to be in person. In Chicago, the first time you were on, but since then we both have plunged in DC. We've been to the awesome World Games in Abu Dhabi. And so for any new listeners, why don't I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably remember you from the first time you were on, but for any new listeners.
I don't think so. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while. So we introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us in that introduction, since last time you were on, you founded the Unite
I'm happy to be on this time, Daniel, talking about the work of Unite. And in some ways, it's a nice connection to our earlier conversation, because when we were talking in Chicago, we talked about the inclusion revolution. We talked about the athletes of Special Olympics whose voices are essential to leading the teaching of the social and cultural embodiment of inclusion. And we kicked off this idea of an inclusion revolution. And the word revolution is important here, right? Because the world is not inclusive right now. Even people that talk about inclusion aren't necessarily inclusive. And we've all got work to do. We've seen that over the last year. So starting 2 years ago, I thought to myself, how can I help bring that voice, the voice that you have, the voice that so many Special Olympics athletes have, that have embodied and taught the lessons of inclusion, taught empathy, taught healing, taught relationship building, taught us how to connect and overcome our fear of difference. It was all those lessons I learned from the athletes of Special Olympics that led me to found Unite, which is an effort to bring the rest of the world into that same vision. It's a collaborative, a collective of people determined to try to bring, if I can put it so boldly, love into action to change our country and to heal some of the wounds, both historic and current, that keep us separated from the best in ourselves and from the best in others.
Awesome. Well, a year ago, if you could take us back to a year ago when the global pandemic and COVID-19 got started, the 24-hour live stream event. Can you show us?
Well, you know what happened, Daniel? It was kind of interesting. Sometimes things hit you, right?
Yeah.
And a year ago when the pandemic hit, I was sitting here in my house and talking to some of my colleagues, and they were like, this is the moment to teach the lesson that we need each other. This is the moment to remind everybody to bring out the best in themselves so that they can help others. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, it's the moment, but goodness gracious, the whole world's shutting down, and what can we do? And we brainstormed. So I started making calls. Would you, I called, famous people and not famous people, would you be willing to share your voice about why this is the moment to unite? And everybody said yes. And before you know it, I called a friend of mine who was a producer, and he said, sure, we can put on a show. And one of my colleagues, Misha Robinson, said, well, let's make it a 24-hour. I was like, 24 hours? Are you kidding me? This is crazy. But everyone said yes. And so that created the Call to Unite live stream. You can see it all 25 hours if you want at unite.us. And that led to our book that comes out this week, The Call to Unite, Voices of Hope and Awakening, which is kind of like a handbook. I think of it as a handbook for anybody who's looking for inspiration, who's looking for rest, who's looking for a path forward, who's kind of frustrated, maybe disappointed, maybe even scared about the future. This is the handbook of all these voices who want to join you, who want to remind each of us that we're not alone, that the best in us is also the best in the rest of us. And if we just let it out, if we just take a chance on each other, there's wonderful things we can do to heal our wounds and make a more just and joyful future. So this book is a year in the making, which is kind of, in a way, it's short for a book. You know what I mean? Sometimes books take 5-10 years, but I wrote a book, took me about 10 years to write it. But this one came quickly, and I think it's because so many people want and need to have their confidence and their hope in each other renewed. And this is a book of countless voices, all saying one thing to the reader. We've got this. We can do this. You're capable. You have gifts. Bring them out. I will help you welcome them.
Awesome. Well, support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now, we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. Chief of Sport and Competition. Welcome to the Special Chronicles show, Lou.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be on. So, fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome to have you on and just to let our listeners in on we first got connected when we were at the Abu Dhabi World Games, I believe I can't believe it was 2 years ago when we were at the Berlin reception, which I don't know that was where you met my SLIGM colleague Ian and I, where we walked up to you and another of your colleagues were at the waterfront.
Yeah, so that was fantastic. I tell you, I'm a shy guy by nature, and you guys were fantastic. Like, you guys were like 50 feet away, all standing off by the water, and you guys just came up and it was like, "Hi, I'm Ian, I'm Dan, we're Sergeant Shriver, International Global Messengers, blah blah," and we just started talking, and I thought that was so cool. I would have never had the courage to do that. I'm like the second guy. Like, if somebody starts the conversation, I'm in, but I'm never the first guy. I'm super, super shy. So that was very, very memorable for me that you guys walked all the way across a grass field. There was nobody there. And you walked up to the two of us and we just hit it off. So yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and this is mostly about your story, but I'll briefly share. You said that you're pretty shy, and long before I've been participating as an athlete and now as a Sergeant Shriver International Global Messenger for quite a while now, for a lot of years. But long before I participated in Special Olympics, growing up in my early years in school, and I say before, when I had a lot more hair back then, I also was shy, and so it's amazing it probably goes to just how Special Olympics has transformed like so many athletes like myself and the over 6 million athletes we have across the globe. It like so many of us, like going from somebody who was shy, somebody who really, as I say, communication is my biggest struggle, but it's also my biggest passion, really taken a big struggle and really, and so yeah, so I can relate a little bit to your story back then.
yeah, that's fantastic.
And before we let you introduce yourself to our listeners, I want to kind of briefly comment on that scene that I don't know about you, but I still remember that scene of Ian and me walking up to you and by the waterfront. I don't know if that was the Persian Gulf or exactly what waterfront it was.
Yeah, I can't recall the body of water, but I got to say, the other thing too, it's always helpful to have somebody. Like, Ian seems like a super outgoing guy too, so you guys had a lot of confidence. Ian's afraid, he's not shy. So to have somebody with you, I've always liked that. Like, then I'm probably going to be less shy if I've got somebody with me. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, total respect for
thank you
introducing yourselves. And it was great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and at the time when we first met, none of us knew that COVID would be that in this global pandemic would be coming a year after we were all together in Abu Dhabi. And the fact that our SSIGM term was supposed to end at the end of 2022, and so it was at the time, it was either beach volleyball or Ian and I, and along with our mentors, we went to the Berlin reception. And I think at the time, I don't know type format, but kind of, I guess maybe expand a little bit more and tell us a little bit more about your career history leading up to Special Olympics.
Happy to, Dan. So I've been fortunate. I've never been somebody who's planned out something and thought that, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. I've just been sort of very fortunate where I've had opportunities. So I wound up by no great strategic thought or anything, where I'm pretty well rounded. So I worked in competition management. I know sport pretty well. I'm what do you say? I'm a generalist. So I know sport well. I know venue operations and venue management pretty well. I know a bit about marketing and some of that stuff, a bit about strategic planning and everything. So I've got a generalist background where, I find that that's helpful, and especially in this role, that it's helpful when you go to work with an organizing committee. I'm so fortunate, got a great team. When I first took over on the competition side, that team was fantastic. And then on the sports side and bringing it all together. So I've got people that know their stuff and that are experts, so I don't need to know everything. And once you get comfortable in the fact that you don't need to know everything, you just have good people and you just have to empower those people, you're going to do great. So I just get the obstacles out of the way, help empower them. And I know enough to be conversational in a lot of the stuff. But when it gets into a real deep conversation about, accommodation contracts or transport or IT or finance, I know that I've got people that I can go to and that they're good and that's what they know. So, just a very fortunate, generalist. And, as far as the movements are concerned, the Olympic movement obviously is done a lot of great work globally. The IOC, they put a lot of money into sport, into the development of sport. They do a lot of work with refugees and women in sport. So the IOC is a fantastic movement. The Olympic movement's contributed a lot to society. The Paralympic movement is a newer movement, not unlike Special Olympics. Yeah. The movement started after the Second World War. There's a great documentary called Rising Phoenix on Netflix that gives you a bit of the history of the Paralympic movement. Definitely worth watching. So my time at the IPC and the Paralympic movement was always going to be really sort of close to my heart, and the rise of the Paralympic movement, and the Paralympic Games will be in LA in 2028.
Support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. The EnergyForce is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives, and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they're literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. Welcome back. It's so good to be back behind the mic for another week, another episode, as we kick off 2.5 months of new episodes of our ComEd EnergyForce series here on the Special Chronicles program. On specialchronicles.com/EnergyForce is where you can go to find the show notes, to find all the previous episodes and videos and much more on our podcast page for this series. And I want to briefly mention at the top of the episode that on this series is Vice President of Exelon Corporate Relations and President of the Exelon Foundation, Paula Conrad. Please put your hands together as our virtual podcast listener friends who are listening in their earbuds or on those speakers. Put your virtual hands together as we welcome Paula to the Special Chronicles show. Awesome. So just imagine, I know we're pre-recording this and we're doing this virtual. Imagine that we have a virtual audience listening with their headphones or their earbuds or their speakers if they're driving or around their house, and just imagine them applauding as you come on the show.
I will. I promise.
Hopefully I don't have any lights on. I'm just the natural light in from my window. So I know it's sometimes with video, I feel like I should turn a light on, but
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So with that, this is pineapple bubbly sparkling water from the ComEd EnergyForce training we had in 2021, January 2021. So as I open this for the first time, I know I'm waiting 3 months to open it, but
for the celebration today, it's
bubbly. I feel like for the kick off this 2.5 month series as we really kick off and celebrate the 10th anniversary of the ComEd EnergyForce program. But before we get into all of that, and I forgot exactly when we first met, but tell us First, introduce yourself to our listeners and your connection to our disability community and your role at the ComEd EnergyForce program. I believe you're one of the co-founders, but that and your role at the Exelon ComEd company.
So I'm Paula Conrad. I work at Exelon, which is the parent company of ComEd here in Chicago and Northern Illinois. And you're right, I was involved in the start of ComEd EnergyForce, which, for those who don't know, the country's first ever energy education program taught by people with disabilities. So when you introduced me at the beginning, there was a picture of me, and it's with my niece, Nina, and my nephew, Patrick, and they both live in Glenview, and there they are. They have Down syndrome. That picture was taken when 18 of us and my family went to Ireland for a big family trip.
I thought it was in Dublin. I was just in Dublin a couple of years ago, so I recognized that it was in Dublin.
Yeah, that beautiful castle in the background. We had a ton of fun, big group of us. But when, Patrick and Nina were born, my family, we rallied and really became involved, to support people with developmental disabilities. So since they've been in my life, that's been a part of my life, that purpose and mission. I met somebody at ComEd, her name's Michelle Potasic. Her son, Vince, has Down syndrome. And, we just started getting to know each other. She works on ComEd's marketing side. And we started talking about all that ComEd does to educate people about energy efficiency. And, this would have been about 11 years ago. We were doing a lot in terms of educating school groups, senior citizens, people from underserved communities. But Michelle and I started talking about, hey, we don't do that for people with developmental disabilities. And many of them control their own energy usage. So she and I just got together, started this program thinking, let's have people with developmental disabilities teach their peers with disabilities. And that was the first year. We had 8 people in the program, and we saw all that they were capable of. And right afterward, we expanded that to, it shouldn't just be people with disabilities teaching others with disabilities. Really with an inclusion mindset and being out in the community, they should be teaching the general public. So after that first year, we expanded it to this broader education program, and it's just grown leaps and bounds since then.
Awesome. And hopefully nobody noticed. I spilled some of this on me, but no one noticed. Well, hopefully the podcast listeners definitely didn't notice because they're listening to us on audio. But anyways, so thanks for that introduction, and let's go into a little bit more detail and explaining to us what the ComEd EnergyForce program is. I know and we'll get to it in a little in the midway part of this program today, been part of the ComEd, Special Chronicles has been partnered with the ComEd EnergyForce program for now. This is our 4th year, but explain to us, long-time listeners, at least listeners for the past 3-4 years now, on every episode we play, and a lot of times when you listen to podcasts, you hear sponsors, right, on podcasts. And so as a part of that sponsor break, people hear all the time of what you just said about how the ComEd EnergyForce program is the nation's first energy efficiency program taught by people with disabilities. We say that on every episode, and now we play support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. The EnergyForce is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives, and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they're literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. Join our supporters and support this podcast, specialchronicles.com/give. And specialchronicles.com is where to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Subscribe to our podcast. All the links will be in the description below of you listening to this podcast. And without further ado, put your virtual hands together as we welcome our guests, Molly and Kathleen Shriver. Welcome. They started applauding quietly, and then they kind of raised the volume. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while since. It's.
So Molly and I grew up with the movement as almost family to us. It was almost another family member was the Special Olympics movement. As you know, our grandmother started it 51 years ago now. And we grew up playing sports and doing camps. And we call them unified sports. And camps with athletes with and without disabilities, and sitting at the dinner table with people with and without disabilities, and attending World Games, and just being incredibly inspired our whole lives by people with and without disabilities working together. So that was our introduction was probably our birth to the movement. It was almost like I said, a family member to us. And today, Molly and I are both on the Founders Council. Molly's the chair and I'm the vice chair, and we get to work together to continue getting involved in the movement in new ways and to continue my grandma's legacy in new ways.
Awesome.
Yeah. So as Kathleen said, we both grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, just 10 minutes from our grandmother's house. Special Olympics has always been a part of our lives. We both were coaches or assistant coaches for our local unified basketball teams. We spent the summers going to Camp Shriver in our grandmother's backyard in Potomac. And now we've continued our family tradition of Special Olympics through the Special Olympics Founders Council, which Kathleen mentioned. So the Founders Council is essentially a body of the administrative structure of Special Olympics International, in which we support different initiatives that Special Olympics International puts forward. Our role is to represent the family within this Special Olympics movement, participate locally and on an international level in various different games or community activations. And the third part of our role as members is to be educated on what the organization is working on, whether it's within the policy and advocacy aspect of Special Olympics International, or healthy athletes, or sports or young athletes. So the Special Olympics Founders Council consists right now of about, I want to say, 6 of our cousins. I am honored to serve as the chair with Kathleen as my vice chair. We also have Tim Shriver, who you mentioned has been on your show, my brother Tommy Shriver, our cousin Christina Schwarzenegger, and our other cousin Natasha. And so we all have different interests. I love to use this example that Natasha and Christina are very creative. So right now they're working on a special project with our marketing department, where they're able to use their creative talents to support the marketing department. Timbo is at law school at UVA. So in the past spring, he helped with our Capitol Hill Day. So it's a really great space for our cousins to come together and work to support the Special Olympics movement, continue our grandma's legacy onto the next generation, and use our special gifts and talents to contribute to that. And we are really happy to be launching this new Founders Council legacy movement, and we're so grateful for opportunities to speak about it with you.
Yeah, awesome. I want to touch a little bit about her legacy, and if you both have a favorite, I'm sure you guys have a lot of favorite stories, but a favorite story from your early days of Special Olympics with your grandmother, whether it's at Camp Tribal or at a World Games.
Sure. So as we mentioned, we lived, I live 5 minutes from my grandma. I went to her house almost every day after school and every Saturday and Sunday to play with my cousins. Kathleen's family, and oftentimes our cousins from out of state would come in and visit. And so my grandma was my best friend growing up till I was 10, and when she unfortunately passed away. But I just remember her as a powerful force. Always so much fun at her house. She had an unusually strong devotion to the Mother Mary, which was really impressive to watch and grow and learn from. And everyone always jokes about her competitive nature and her stern ability to create momentum. And I think that that's something that I was able to witness at a very young age through family competitions. And so every time we would get together on the weekends, we'd bring all of our friends to her house and we'd play capture the flag or run around the house and do relay races. And one time my brother Tommy had his friend Bo Hanley over, and they were about, I want to say 5 or 6 years old, like really young little kids, but a lot of energy. And my grandma had just gotten back from the hospital after breaking a couple of ribs, maybe a hip, maybe an arm. She wasn't in state to be competing against an energetic 5-year-old boy. And so she had organized a relay race in the house. And I think that, Bo made some comment like, oh, I could beat you or whatever. And she was like, okay, game on. And we watched my grandma stumble around the first floor of the house, very frail. Like my dad was very nervous, and she ended up beating Bo. And it was the most hilarious and one of the most memorable stories that our family tells about her competitive and fun-loving nature to take on people of all different, abilities, whether it's a 5-year-old boy or my dad or whatever. And so I miss her every day. I have a picture of her here in my room that I don't know if you can see. It's always, I miss her. I love her. And I'm so happy that I get to continue to honor her even, when she would be turning 100.
Awesome. And Kathleen, you want to share some of your favorite memories?
Sure. Some of my favorite memories are definitely competitive ones as well. My grandma was always inviting athletes of Special Olympics or people on her Special Olympics team over. So as Molly said, on Saturdays and Sundays, we'd end up in the swimming pool with people with and without disabilities. And Grandma would teach us breaststroke and freestyle and create competitions for us in the pool and invite our friends to make new friends with Special Olympics athletes. And our Aunt Rosemary was at my grandma's often, so we'd have dinner with her, and Grandma and her would tell stories, which was also fun to see because of their incredible friendship and their sisterhood, that I'm really excited to continue and to look at when I work with my cousins and siblings, and all this work was as just a model for teamwork, for friendship, for love.
Awesome. So we're going to continue after a brief 30-second break. and talk about the Special Olympics Founders Council that you both have touched on briefly at the beginning of the episode, and about support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at SpecialChronicles.com/give. That's SpecialChronicles.com/give. Our guest this week on the Special Chronicles show is Oscar Munoz, retired executive chairman and previous CEO of United. We were on stage a few months ago at his retirement event at the hangar here at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, where I hosted a Q&A session with him. And now he's graciously agreed to come on the podcast for a little bit longer conversation. And so please put your virtual hands together and welcome Oscar to Special Chronicles. Welcome, Oscar.
The crowd goes wild. Hey, Daniel, nice to see you.
Hey, good, nice to see you. I know we just imagine was sitting in front of a live audience when they applaud. But yeah, good to see you. And I know the last time we talked was back in May, I think, when we were on stage.
No, it was a wonderful event, and you're so kind to have shown up. And it's a courageous thing for someone to speak in front of that larger crowd.
Yeah.
And, hundreds of thousands on the screen on the webcast as well. But you did an amazing job, not only representing obviously the community that you're part of, but importantly the community of the employees and caring attitude. And it was a very special moment for me and my family. Yeah,
absolutely. And so let's begin. I'm sure some listeners may know you because you've probably been in the news from your time as CEO and then as chairman. But for any new listeners, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and your connection to our Special Olympics move? It's weird on the screen. Special Olympics movement and how you first got involved in Special Olympics and your current role at United Airlines and what being part of the United family means to you and then what you see as your legacy.
Yeah, that's a broad array of questions. And so I think probably the most important part for me to convey to you and your audience is the advent and the evolution and how we as a United Airlines came to partner with the Special Olympics movement. And I think that started with a personal conversation with Tim Shriver and a lot of the team at Special Olympics at an event that we met. And it just struck home in so many ways. And as we sort of vetted it inside the company, as all of you know, the special needs sort of community is quite large. It affects so many people. And it's sort of quiet in so many ways. And what really struck me specifically is we had an incident on one of our aircraft where somebody on the on the spectrum, but not visibly special needs, but clearly had those, is tough for the parents sometimes. So they're traveling, and the child just wasn't responding to some of the conversation they were having with the flight attendant, and it became frankly not very well, and it just drove home the point that we don't adequately train our folks to understand and recognize those needs. And at the same time, partnering with Special Olympics was such a great, such a feel-good moment. It touches so many people. But at the same time, the training was very important to our folks. And then importantly, in your perfect representation of that is, okay, let's go beyond that. It's not just about feel good and having good pictures and all that sort of stuff. Can we give people what all of us need more than anything is that dignity that comes with actual employment, actual engagement and inclusion and everything. And I think, as I think Tim Shriver put it so aptly when we announced this at one of our big leadership meetings, 4,000 people in the room, and the Special Olympics people came in, and Bree Bogucki, I know he's one of your friends, and one of my good friends, came and spoke. But Tim said something that was always sticks with me, and I use it in my speeches all the time. He said, in a world that's constantly divided, he says, we Special Olympics choose a world that's united. And so the play on words was just magical. It fit well with our nice thing. And an incredible relationship was born. And I personally have taken, I was there on the first day that, you and several of your cohorts were hired into the company pre-pandemic. Yeah. And it's just one of the most special moments that we get to participate in. So it's been wonderful. And you asked at the tail end of your question about legacy. I get asked a lot. And I say, I think a legacy can be many things, right? The success of the company, the strategy, the investors are happy, customers are happy. But for me, I think the most important part is that human beings, the hundreds of, when I was there, 100,000 or so folks that worked at our company, that were part of my united family. I take that very personally, and touching every single one of those in a way that makes them feel more included, more involved, more special, not because they're special needs, but because every single human should be treated that way. And I like to see that caring attitude and the new spirit at United that's been created in my watch. I love the fact that it continues and lingers on, and that folks like you get this sort of vehicle to really convey your messages and to show others. And so I can't wait to put this on my, social media feeds and just get ample amplification and make sure that you get even more subscribers.
Thanks. Yeah, it's amazing. And final question.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising, peaceful protesters
in a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
equality,
dignity, and the recognition of our shared humanity.
We will not stop
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever,
and coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution is inclusion. Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
And with that, as you know, the inclusion and inclusion revolution is a big part of Special Olympics, but it's also inclusion and taking inclusion to new heights is a big part of our United family as well. So I conclude with all the guests, at least for the past couple of years, ever since coming back from the Abu Dhabi World Games, I've been concluding with this final question, and so I'll do the same with you, and that is, what does inclusion mean to you?
We talked a little bit about it over the course of the podcast, but I think inclusion is what it means to me. How do I put this? Your feeling of inclusion is what it means to me, meaning I want to be able to ask you or have anybody ask you how you feel about participating in my organization or the organization we're part of or whatever we do. We put a lot of metrics on this and how many people of this are employed or do this. We don't always ask the question of the actual individuals constantly. How do you feel about being here with us? Do you feel included? Do you feel wanted? Do you feel valued? Do you feel that? And those are really, really difficult metrics because we're all humans and one day we feel more wanted than the other, right? We go up and down. But that is, for me, the ultimate goal of anything that you do, whether it's culture or strategy or operations efficiency and diversity and inclusion and ESG and all the different things that are out there today. The real benchmark is how humans, individual humans, answer those questions. Do you feel valued? Do you feel part of something? Because that is the ultimate emotion inside a human being that gets them to engage and do things. And when I hear the things that you do for our customers, that comes from your effort, your discretionary effort. You want to do these things because where you work, you feel included, you feel valued, right? And that's the trick in leadership that we often forget. We set broad strategies about business, and all that is critically important. But in a business like ours, where it's people to people, you know what? Inclusion has the benefit of making people like you really go out of their way to help others. And so for me, inclusion is how others truly feel when someone asks them about these things.
Awesome. We get a lot of great answers, but that's a perfect way to wrap up this conversation, our time together. It's been a joy. Support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at SpecialChronicles.com/give. That's SpecialChronicles.com/give. Speak on the Special Chronicles show is Natalie Bomke, anchor at Fox 32 News in Chicago in early 2020. Well, let me go. We'll get to that when I bring her on. But please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Natalie to the Special Chronicles show. Welcome, Natalie. So, yes, excited to have you. I think I might be a little frozen there, but hopefully there we go. We're back. So, as I was just saying, and we had briefly touched on this in the pre-show that in early 2020, so just before COVID hit, and about a year and a half ago, before COVID-19 and the global pandemic shut everything down, you visited me here in the Special Chronicles studio. I think it was before I had a green screen, but because you did a story on my story and Special Chronicles and being an athlete in Special Olympics. And so now you graciously agreed to come back on where I could turn the microphone around on you. And I think we had first met maybe a little bit before that at a holiday event. It's excited to have you finally on to kind of turn the microphone around and have you on this podcast.
Yeah, I am honored that you asked me, Daniel. And I was so inspired by your story. I remember we were at a Special Olympics award dinner, and we sat next to each other, and I got to know you. And I thought, you told me about your travel overseas with the Special Olympics. And I thought, I have got to share this man's story with more people, because I was so inspired about, when you're telling me about your mom's pregnancy and what the doctor had said, and just the chances and the expectations, and you have beyond exceeded those. And so I wanted more people to know about that. Yeah,
thank you. So if our listeners want to go and watch that, SpecialChronicles.com/Fox32 Chicago will take them to that story, right?
Yeah, exactly. That'll be the link that'll take you to the story. You can see behind the scenes, little glimpse of Daniel's apartment as well, if you're interested in that, and a picture of you as a baby, I believe, as well.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference. Our demands are
equality,
dignity, and the recognition of our shared humanity. We will not stop or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution is inclusion. Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
Our guest this week on the Special Chronicles show is a returning guest, John Moe, who's an Emmy-winning television producer from the new Peacock original series Bone for Business. And a few years ago, John was a previous guest on this podcast about the Emmy-winning docuseries Born This Way and the documentary Deaf Out Loud. And now he graciously agreed to return as a guest on this podcast for an engaging conversation about his new television series Born for Business that is streaming now for free on Peacock. And so please put your virtual hands together as we welcome John. Welcome, John. Welcome back.
Happy to be here.
And I forgot when the last time that you were on the.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here, Daniel. I think from the start of our company, Bunemer, we were always interested in telling stories of communities that have been marginalized, communities that have not been featured regularly or on film or television. And so obviously Born This Way was an example of that. The cast members all having Down syndrome, all at that unique point in their lives where they had been raised to be independent, and they were taking their final steps towards independence. It was a very relatable story and an important story, particularly for people in the Down syndrome community, because they really were the first generation that were raised to be independent.
This new series, and tell us a little bit about the backstory of how Born for Business came to be when you started filming it, and a little bit about how you came to produce this new series.
Sure. Well, it's actually one of the most unusual stories I have of how a television show came to be. I was a panelist at Real Screen, which is a TV convention, and I was talking about Born This Way and about the show and about the impact it was having. And after the panel, a woman came up to me and introduced herself and said she worked for Shopify, which is a Canadian company that actually handles sort of the back process for entrepreneurs online. He was a huge fan of not only Born This Way, but also going back to the real world. And she started talking to me about entrepreneurship in the disability community and how it is really, for some people who are shut out of regular jobs because of their disability, entrepreneurship can be an answer. And we just started talking about it. And, a year later, we were shooting Born for Business.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
And we're back. If you, I'm sure a lot of those clips were really fascinating to listen to, and you guys just got a little small peek. But if you missed any of those episodes, if you go to the show notes in the description below, click on the link, specialchronicles.com/podcast 460. That's specialchronicles.com/podcast 460. I put links to all the full episodes of all these clips that you heard from Tim Shriver, Lou, Paula Conrad, Kathleen Shriver's episode, Oscar Munoz, Natalie Bomke, and John Moe. So once again, Tim was on episode. Do I have those up? Episode 418. Lou, the chief of sporting competition at United, was on episode 420. Paula Conrad, episode 422. Kathleen Shriver, episode 445. Oscar was on episode 448. Natalie was on 457, and John Moe was on 459. So all those will be in the description below. Once again, if you want to learn more about our partner, Special Chronicles, the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program, which is the nation's first energy efficiency education program taught by people with disabilities, you can visit specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That is specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And if you want to help us to fund our weekly podcasts and live stream shows, so we can continue to produce these audio podcasts and these live shows, these live stream shows. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter Live, it costs money for us to upload these shows and produce these live video shows. So if you want to help us so we can continue to tell empowering stories behind the microphone to further our mission, which is giving respect and voice to people with special needs, please support this podcast at SpecialChronicles.com/give. That's SpecialChronicles.com/give. There we go. I've got that link right there. SpecialChronicles.com/give. The link will be in the show notes description below. But if you can really join our community of supporters, and if you love this podcast and you want us to continue these weekly podcast episodes, please go to SpecialChronicles.com/give. It goes a long ways. You will help us to continue to give a voice to give a voice and respect to those of us, people with disabilities, those of us with special needs. It goes a long ways. We can't do this work. We can't do this mission. We can't produce these podcasts without the support of you, our listeners. So as we conclude this year, and if you're looking for any causes or organizations to donate at the end of the year, please make a gift today. SpecialChronicles.com/give. Support this podcast and support all the shows that we have on Special Chronicles. It goes a long way. And from the bottom of my heart, and from all of us at Special Chronicles, we thank you so much for your generous support to donate. So once again, you can donate. You can support this podcast and make a gift today at SpecialChronicles.com/give. That's SpecialChronicles.com/give. And I hope that you all were winging the new year. If you are traveling at the end of the year for these holidays and looking for some podcasts to listen to, then you can go to you can just look up Special Chronicles wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe. Once again, SpecialChronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please, you can leave your comments on our Instagram page. You can tweet us. You can use the hashtag Special Chronicles, and you can join the conversation. And we really look forward to seeing you on our social media pages: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. SpecialChronicles.com is where you can go for links to follow us. And make sure to also subscribe or do what you do these podcasts. Subscribe or follow, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Special Chronicles and you will find us. And you will find this podcast to subscribe to. In addition to listening to this audio podcast, if you want to watch the video version, you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Just search for Special Chronicles, or just go to SpecialChronicles.com and you can click the YouTube link to subscribe to our channel. And you can also sign up for our newsletter on SpecialChronicles.com. Just click the sign up. I think there should be a little pop-up button that says sign up, and you can subscribe to our newsletter where you get our updates. So if you don't necessarily check your social media every day, then by signing up and subscribing to our newsletter, you will still get updates of our podcast, and sometimes we have exclusive updates and other messages that we send out to our newsletters or subscribers. So with that, I hope that you guys all enjoyed this highlight, this 2021 best of episode, and have a good New Year's Eve. And I'll see you again. I'll see you in the new year. I'll see you in 2022 with all new podcast episodes right here on Special Chronicles. We'll be we've got some. We'll be on the road to the 2022 USA Games with some new podcasts with an athlete from Illinois, and the CEO of the 2022 USA Games will be on the show, and some tons of other fascinating guests. So stay tuned right here on the Special Chronicles show on SpecialChronicles.com. And I'll see you in the new year. And until then, remember, choose to include. Happy New Year. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles Shows podcast. Visit SpecialChronicles.com to follow Special Chronicles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. Also, subscribe to our newsletter mailing list to sign up for our updates and get exclusive content delivered to your inbox. Remember to do what you do with these podcasts.